Tariffs are here. Yay, say some people, and some people say boo. I'm going to explain to you how it could affect you, the way ahead, and how it may not be as big of a deal as some people are saying it, but it still may affect things that we talk about, things that we care about in everyday carry and prep. And yeah, I think it's very interesting. So first, let's summarize the tariffs themselves. Well, first, how about you take the time to like this video and maybe consider subscribing while I light this actual cigar. So, the tariffs are here. A tariff is a tax. So we have unilaterally, I say we because this is America, all right? We have unilaterally placed a 25% tax on all goods coming from Canada and Mexico, a 10% tariff on all energy coming from Canada, that was things like natural gas, petroleum, etc., and a 10% tariff on all goods coming from China. Why do we do this? We did this according to the president's office for two reasons. Number one, there is a trade deficit with Canada and a trade deficit with Mexico. And number two, because these countries are allowing fentanyl and illegals to pour across our border. Now, these are things that the president's office is saying. The fentanyl thing, I'm not educated enough on that to know, like, if they're allowing it to happen. I don't know what allowing means. I don't know if that means that they're not doing anything about it. They see the fentanyl on someone's back and they're just like, don't worry about it. I don't know what that means. But I do know what a trade deficit is. And a trade deficit is that one country buys more from another country and it creates a deficit. I don't think we could ever have an equal trade exchange between us and Canada. So it's always going to be a trade deficit is not a bad thing organically. We have 340 million Americans that live here in the United States. Canada has 40 million people that live in all of Canada. We're, 10 times the size of them almost. So it would make sense that there's a trade deficit. They can't buy as much stuff as we buy because there's not as much humans that would use the item. So I think that that's a good excuse to give to people because it makes them feel good inside. But I don't think it's something that we would ever overcome. We unilaterally decide to put these tariffs on, and I just don't think it's going to be, well, I may be 100% wrong about this, but it may not be as bad as some people say it could be. The tariffs take place, they're going to go in full effect on Tuesday. That's February 4th, 2025. The other countries have already talked about how they're going to retaliate against the tariffs that we implemented. But here's the thing. There are a lot of things within everyday carry and prep that come over from these two countries. Everything from nickel, like the actual raw materials, Canadian steel. We have things such as automotive parts that you may be using your prep items, machine parts that come from Mexico, food that comes over from these two places. The cost of those organically will go up because of the company. Let's just hypothetical. If a company only makes a profit margin of 11%, they import goods from Canada to sell it to us. If it's a 25% tariff on the good that they imported, they can't absorb 25% because they go into the red. Their 11% gets sucked up. Now, they go from an 11% profit margin to a 16% going into the red. They can't suck it up. So they have to pass that on to the customer. So that's why prices go up for us. I think that I really am going to examine some of the things that I suggest on this channel because I don't know how long this could last. But as I suggest to you guys, different flashlights, most of which come from China, a 10% tariff on flashlights, I think, can be absorbed by these countries, but will it be? I don't know. I'm going to actually take a look at the pricing structure, and is that something that I can recommend to you guys whenever I'm talking about it on the channel? If I'm talking about a multi-tool that is made by Leatherman, where most, Leatherman assembles their tools in America, but a lot of their tooling comes from other places. And for instance, their plier heads come from Mexico for a lot of their multi-tools, not every single one, but a good chunk of them. So maybe that means that before I make a suggestion on something that could cost you more money, I have to really present that to you so you know exactly what that means. But the reason I say it may not be as bad as we believe, because the markets haven't reacted yet. Monday, the NASDAQ opens, the S&P 500 opens. If those fluctuate a lot, then that could cause our tariffs to be dropped. Maybe we don't do them at all. Also, Canada has already slapped us back with the tariff of 25%. They're now strategically deciding places that they may or may not buy from, like British Columbia has announced they're no longer buying American liquor. So if you're Tennessee or Kentucky or other places that make bourbons or vodkas, et cetera, they're not buying it from you anymore. So maybe if that pain is felt, we'll drop the tariffs. I don't know. But there could be some drastic things that arise that literally cause SHTF. And I want to talk about them. And I am not trying to be a disaster baiter. OK, what I'm trying to do is present to you things that could literally happen. And I want you to prepare for. So one thing that Canada did was they counter tariffs, or they also implemented their own tariffs. Mexico has implemented tariffs as well. But another thing that Canada could do specifically is that they could unilaterally cut off things that we use. So Canada supplies a lot of energy to the Northeast, to different manufacturing areas. By energy, I mean they supply natural gas. They supply a whole lot of electricity. They also supply petroleum, and they supply crude oil. They could say you can no longer import it at all, period. They could just cut it off. Imagine if you live in a Northeast state. Imagine if you're in a manufacturing plant in Michigan. Imagine they just cut the electricity off just because they can do it. That can cause chaos. It's something that can be done. I was reading reports where Canada is considering strategically cutting off electricity to places like Trump Tower, or cutting off electricity right before the Super Bowl, things that would literally be felt by Americans or make headlines with Americans immediately. That is that's some diabolical stuff. I think that whatever the case may be, if they decide to cut off energy stores, if they decide to cut off a certain good, that it would be immediate. It could be immediately felt within your household. And I think something you need to consider immediately for your prep. So there is a possibility that these tariffs do affect our everyday lives. They've already done some interviews with mechanic shops, for instance, that believe the cost of an oil change, which averages in America between $60 and $85, could go up 25%. Most of that comes from Canada. So for 25% tariff on oil, it could change your oil, et cetera, et cetera. I have a bunch of videos in the works for items that I have, which I know were manufactured overseas. I don't know if all of them were made in China, if they were made in Taiwan. But now I have to examine, like, what was the pricing when I got these items? What are they going to be thereafter? Can I still make the same recommendation? And this could be the beginning of a trade war with other countries as well. Because I'm just, in my opinion, flat out, we're in a trade war with Canada and Mexico. China hasn't responded with the tariffs yet. They're threatening to sue us in the World Trade Order. I don't know what the hell that means, but they haven't implemented the same thing. Last time we had tariffs with China, you know, the suicide rate for farmers skyrocketed because the number of soybeans being purchased by China was drastically reduced. They had to be bailed out by American dollars because of the tariffs. It was hard. And now we're back at it again. There's a possibility with the European Union, the EU, that we could place tariffs unilaterally on any things being imported from Europe. That could happen as soon as April 1st, maybe even sooner. I just think that I'm really going to promise you guys, as I continue to create content, from anything from watches to survival bags. Like I just got a survival bag, which can be a 3-day survival bag, which is a pre-built kit. I need to pay attention to, is the cost worth it, or should you DIY it, or should you wait? These are the categories of things I'm going to think about. We really can't DIY a pocket knife. At least I can't. Maybe you can. So before I present something to you, is the cost of this worth it? Should you buy American, or is the price absorbently too high? A survival kit that's pre-made, where I know the survival kit was $200 when I first got it, but it's packed with a lot of stuff that's made from China. Maybe the price of this survival kit goes up to $225, $230, whatever. Does it make sense to buy the pre-made kit from Life Gear, or from Essie, Randall Adventures Company, from Rhino Ready, or should you just DIY your own? Things I have to think about as well. I think that as you go through your everyday life, we all own crap from China. I probably just used a gang of stuff from China just to light this cigar. If you get an opportunity as you're walking through a store, flip the old label around. Okay, if it says made in the USA, or if it currently says like made in a European country or made in a country that's not implementing tariffs, maybe you're going to throw that in the cart and make the purchase. It's because if you are at places like Cabela's, REI, Camping World, etc., and you get yourself used to paying for buying things that are made in America, which organically could cost more money, then we normally don't tariff ourselves. I mean, corporations are greedy and they could always raise their prices. But if you're used to buying things that are made in America, there's a less likelihood that you have to worry about an immediate uptick in that pricing. I say that to say that any scenario, any situation could happen with this. We don't know where this is going. And I'm not making this video to be organically political. I don't think that's the point. Some of you guys are going to love the tariffs. Some of you are going to hate them. But I have had the chance to analyze what this could mean if Canada or Mexico strikes back too hard. If they strike back too hard, it could cause chaos in my immediate life. Okay, I live in a red state, and I don't know what the hell my state is exporting to Mexico or Canada, but if they decide to swipe back hard at Texas by not importing the goods that we make, then it could affect my daily cost of living. It could affect the items that I purchase to keep my family safe and prepped. Everything from medical gear all the way to survival and prep type stuff as well. I don't have the ability to go out back and start planting and growing my own food. And most of you guys that watch this channel probably don't have that ability. So as we go through our preps and everything that we think about, we have to take this stuff into account. But comment down below, what do you think about tariffs? They are here. Do you think that it could raise any threat levels? Can it raise any cost levels? Is it something that you think about as you go through and make your preparations for other stuff? Do you now have to diminish the amount of food that you purchase because you're still in the middle of stockpiling and preparing for any possible natural disaster? I would love to know what your comments down below. If this is your first time kicking it with your boy, my name is Marine X. I like talking about all sorts of stuff, specifically things that I think that you need to prepare yourself for, but I'm not trying to be pants on fire when I talk about this. These are things that I've thought through and I've waited for things to unfold before I speak upon them. Shout out to your boy Canadian Prepper, but I'm not trying to be Canadian Prepper because I think sometimes he's a little pants on fire. I'm trying to be more realistic, more like city prepping. If you like that type of stuff, if you like EDC stuff, if you like things talking about bags and knives and sometimes smoking cigars and making coffee, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you part of the battalion. If this is not your first time stopping by, well, thank you once again for watching me run my grape. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.